What's that?
Okay, it's recording.
Okay. I guess I guess first order of business is to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. I was not at this meeting, but I did read through the minutes. Anybody have any additions, subtractions, issues with the minutes? Hearing none, I would
Motion.
help me
Ask
out
for a
here.
motion?
Motion.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to, does anyone want to present a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
I didn't catch you original, but I caught the second. I think we're good. All in favor? I think
Aye.
that's got it. All opposed? Okay, minutes are good. Approved there. And I guess new business for the meeting is still finalizing the draft on the cost of services study. I'm assuming Pete or someone will want to chime in there.
Yeah. So we first off want to mention that we're hoping that we can because this is really one of the last contract proposals that this subcommittee would do would be to roll this committee into the full advisory committee meeting and go back to the full advisory committee meeting next. So if you've heard that this meeting is going away, it's not going away because we're just going to quit working on stuff. It's just we're folding it into the full committee. Again, this is the last contract. So we're back to discussions about the proposal, the cost of services study. And just a quick little history. There was a rough draft document presented. There has been amendments and changes that I believe took care of concerns of the written RFP. We ended up going to the full committee and had discussion. There was a motion to approve it as written, which failed. So it came back to this subcommittee for further discussion. And, you know, the one thing that I want to ask is because it's unclear to me whether or not that we've addressed all of the written concerns within the RFP draft as it is current. So are there other changes that need, you know, to be brought to the forefront? I know that there's concerns about some of it, but at this point, is there language that needs to be changed? So at this point, if there's no language to be changed, are there concerns that need to be?
There may be, I'm sorry to interrupt, Pete, trying to get my thoughts together. Jerry sent out a very thought-provoking email, and I believe that needs to be discussed with regard to the language of the RFP. Obviously, we want to make sure we stay on a level playing field. We address both sides of concerns and desires. But Jerry's email, I thought, was astute in its presentation, and I think it nailed it with regard to some of the concerns that we may have as independent haulers.
Okay. Well, I think the email went out to all the committee members. Don't know if everybody's had a chance to review those. And if we could,
Who sent that
Adam?
out, Pete?
Jerry, McGraw photo guy. Um, Jerry was here. Yeah. What is your email, Jerry, that you could have gotten it from?
It is photoguy0146@yahoo.com or gmail.com. I'm not sure which.
I went ahead and just forwarded it to you in case maybe it got buried this morning or something. You can open.
So, Adam, would it be okay for us to open the floor up to Jerry to explain his comments?
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think his email was very, very well written. So I would say, go ahead, Jerry, or
Oh, I would just comment beyond what the email says is that I've got 2 master's degrees and both involve research methodology. And it's just essential that everything in a research project be objective. And there were things in the 5-year plan. I spoke at the public session on the 5-year plan about things that were there. I tried to identify a few of those in the email this morning about there's an assumption that or the way I read the plan was that there's an assumption made that if we're using a franchise type concept where there's one hauler in an area, that will be more efficient than where you've got multiple haulers. That's, to me, is all an assumption. There's no, that I'm aware of, no proof, no direct data that shows that. But it's also based on some factors, such as the one I mentioned in the email, that fewer trucks on the road will mean less damage to the road. I'm not sure there's anything, I'm not aware of any data that supports the concept that there is going to be more damage because of fewer trucks. I raise the concern, on the other hand, as I point out, I think an argument could be made that if there's only one truck in the area, it's going to be hauling more garbage, therefore more weight, and that the more weight would cause the damage. And my point is not to argue that particular concept, but it is to argue that we need objective data. We need discrete information on which to base these things. And my perception overall is that by making these presumptions of this is efficient and that is inefficient, and using a lack of data to arrive at that point, means that the whole research would be questionable. And that's my concern. If you're going to do it, then it needs to be done in such a manner that the research methodology is objective, is not based upon prior facts that are not discrete, not something we can rely on, and making the reference back to the 5-year plan, which based upon these things tells basically anybody putting in an RFP, well, they think that this particular process is efficient and that process is inefficient, and therefore we have to find in this particular direction. That to me skews the whole process, and that was my concern.
I think that's a good explanation, Jerry. Jerry, thank you very much. Again, I think it goes back to Bob's concern over trying to get some type of even background data into this RFP so that we can have subjective responses.
So what is, I go back to the original part. What is there language in here that needs to be changed?
Well, I think Bob
Removed?
wanted to add some additional language at the last meeting, and some historical information. But I don't know if that's going to give the data that Jerry's speaking of. And maybe it's a time to reset and get some, well, possible guidance from a gentleman who has 2 master's degrees in what we're working on as to what facts are needed to develop a good RFQ.
Does it sound like there's a somewhat consensus that it's not the wording, it's the entire request for proposal?
I would disagree. I think that there was a lot of engagement that went into the 5-year report. So I would be caution as to, I don't even know if there is a process to kind of go back now that that has been passed. But I think that, I fully understand the concerns. I think they're very valid, and you made a lot of great points, Jerry. So I do think that some of the language that are in the RFP that we're looking at do address that in terms of, looking at the strengths of the context of the existing hauler system. So I don't necessarily see the RFP language as, negatively impacting or biasing the study in any way. But I do think that we should focus on maybe the specific RFP language and what we can do to improve this language to address everybody's concerns versus, going back to the 5-year study that was already passed after a lot of process.
Would it be, again, this is just a proposal or a request for proposal. If we can come to an agreement that the wording in this proposal is satisfactory to everyone, maybe once we start receiving proposals, we can look at the methodologies that the contractors are using and determine then if we feel like that is a level playing ground, if it's going to accomplish what we feel like it's needing to accomplish. Maybe that the concerns could still be brought up once the proposals are submitted before we would actually commit to anything. I don't know. Maybe again, it sounds like there's methodology issues, and maybe that would clear up some of those issues. Not sure.
We did talk. Go ahead.
I was going to ask about the concept of reviewing that pre-bid meeting, where we can give some background data. Has that been ruled out, Pete, or does members believe that that's not necessary?
It's not ruled out as a part of the process. We can ask for that. And I am I'm sure that that is part of the procurement process, and that wouldn't be a problem, particularly with a contract like this.
And how
Much of
many-
that information is already in the literature, Pete. I don't see how it would be productive for us to go back to the blocks and regenerate information that is out there in the public domain and available.
I'm not quite sure I follow, Pat. Can you restate it?
Well, the efficiency issue, there's a lot of literature on that. The wear and tear on highways and roads, that's dealt with in literature that's available. I don't know whether the full committee wanted us to go back to the blocks and generate original data that's been done in other jurisdictions time and time and time again.
I think this is Bob. I think the committee was basically saying that we need to go back and look at those situations. If, you know, Patrick states that there is information that is available, and quite frankly, a lot of that information has been rebutted numerous times. And I think that, you know, a qualified review of what the assumptions are, it's quite unfortunate that the the questions or the comments were, the objective comments weren't there, that, you know, we actually eliminated, if you recall, comments in regards to that the private sector position was unsafe, environmental issues and health problems. That probably pretty much dictates what's been going on for the last several months in regards to how it's been approached. So it's unfortunate that I guess we can't go back and try to redo the 5-year plan. But I think that as a subcommittee, that we ought to correct the situation in regards to going forward. I too want to agree with Bruce. I started questioning the last time if we could do a pre-qualification meeting. And I contend that that would be a necessary situation to deal with as part of a request for a proposal.
An unnecessary step or a necessary step?
A necessary step.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't quite catch it. So let me ask, it seems as though, is it the reference to these documents, the 5-year plan and the previous study, is that the part that gives headache or concern?
Well, I think it was, but I understand that is past us. I don't know if we can do anything about that or not. It's already been submitted and approved. So unfortunately, we can't restore that or even change it in regards to the actual information that's in the 5-year plan. But it does not mean that we should continue that process with the information that was given and not correct it if it needs to be corrected in regards to the historical references that has been done in regards to the private sector and the services that's been provided.
Okay. Do we have historical references contained within this RFP? Or I'm not quite following you. I'm trying to.
What was the question?
Are there historical inaccuracies that are contained within this RFP draft?
Well, we eliminated some of them, as you well know.
Right. And, you know,
That was time reading it.
that was the first time that it was presented at the first meeting. That material was taken out. There wasn't any contesting of the need to remove that. It came out pretty easy. So we're not trying to stick to something that we don't need to stick to. Trying to work and get the best document that we can. From what I'm hearing from what Jerry said, he referenced back to the 5-year plan and I guess to a certain extent, the 10-year study is removing that language from this RFP, eliminating those concerns.
Well, I guess to be honest about it, it eliminates it as far as the RFP goes, but it doesn't eliminate it in regards to the historical references that have been made for the last number of months. So again, I don't know how to correct that, unfortunately, except that we have to make sure as we go forward with an RFP and with the consulting firms that they understand what's happened over the last 40 years and the fact that the infrastructure and everything is quite available because of the private sector.
So you said the references in the last couple of months. Can you tell me what those are?
No, not at this point. I can't tell you that without seeing them.
Actually, one of the areas where we go back to the past is in background. where we start referring to the evaluation in 2018. Because I think that some of the things that are contained in that report would be items that have been at issue in the last dialogue for the past 10 minutes.
Well, that I agree with you, Sandra, and that's why my question is that if we remove the reference to the 10-year study or the previous solid waste management system evaluation, does that do it? We can't change the 5-year plan. You can, but you have to. It's an amendment process that has to potentially go through another 30-day public comment session. It's a lot to do. So the question is removing the reference here to the 10-year study, I call it the 10-year study, sufficient to allay some of the concerns that are out there. That's
I think you have to also remove the paragraph before that where you're referring to the 5-year plan that's at issue. And I also think in fairness, at the point in time you're starting to talk to people, they need to know that there were issues with those plans. By putting them in here, they're going to click on them and read them. And some of the concerns that Jerry's raised, I think are legitimate.
Okay, so
So,
not everybody is going to agree with what's in these plans. I don't always agree with what is said. And I'm talking about the 5-year solid waste management plan. But it was done through a process in which every member here was involved. So I don't necessarily have a problem with taking out the 10-year study. But while there might be some heartburn on some of the information that was put into the 5-year study, I don't know that we're all in agreement as to exactly what that is wrong.
can I suggest something, Pete? I think that I agree that it is helpful to have historical context because these were done through legitimate processes, but I understand that not everybody agrees with everything in these reports. So I wonder if, going back to Adam's point, if there's a way for us to potentially take out the references to the plans in the RFP, but then during the pre-bid meeting, suggest that, these resources as well as the concerns that were brought up by the haulers in terms of their context are all equally considered just as historical context going forward. So making sure that, that basically the full spectrum of historical context is discussed maybe during the pre-bid process, just as a way to move forward, because I think ultimately we want to move forward with this RFP and get it through, just because we have been kind of talking about it for a while. So I'm wondering if that's a way to, address all of the concerns, but make sure that the people that are doing the study do have access to everything that was done through these legitimate processes.
I think
I think that makes sense because in a way, what you've done, Sumeda, is you've allowed both sides of the issue to be addressed. And
Yes,
That
and
approach as well.
the only risk, I was just going to add, the only risk with that is not every bidder may show up to a pre-bid meeting. So you just have to be aware that if somebody chooses to respond to the RFP without showing up to the meeting, that they miss out on that context. But,
You can make that required. There's lots of jobs that require a bidder to attend that pre-bid meeting or they can't bid on the job. So I don't think that would be a big deal at all to make it required for anyone that wanted to bid to attend that meeting.
I've been to those kind of meetings also, and that you're absolutely true. I don't know why we couldn't require that whoever wanted to perform the bidding process would be in the pre-bid meeting. It seems like with the issues that we're having in regards to, issues as far as objective comments and everything, we need to have something more than just having an RFP go out with the information that's available to a pre-bidder. It requires more than what that, it requires an actual pre-bid meeting. And in that regard, I agree with, I forget who it was, in order to strike, as you have this, you've already struck the information and the language that has pertains to the 2018 evaluation, as well as the 5-year plan. You know, I don't know what we can do with the 5-year plan, but I think the 2018 study should be struck, and we should have a qualified pre-bid meeting. Would, I think, is about the only way to correct the situation at this particular point.
Okay, so this is what actually I was suggesting. I was iffy on the 5-year solid waste management plan because that's something that we can't change, as Bob said. So I don't think that this is a problem, and I know that the pre-bid meeting is not a problem. And if that does become a problem, we won't move forward without bringing it back to this committee. But help me to understand the pre-bid meeting and how we would go about informing the bidders of the information that we want without putting subjectivity into it.
Actually, one thing you could do is clearly indicate that there isn't a preliminary presumption that a single hauler in an area is more efficient than multiple haulers. Because right now, we have that as a presumption, but we have nothing that has proved it.
I don't think that we have that as a presumption, because I think that we took that out at the
No,
previous
I
meeting.
agree. It's when you go back to the plan that the presumptions
Okay.
in some of the words of that.
And so we removed that.
I see that.
A lot of times in those pre-bid meetings, the bidders themselves will have lots of questions, or a lot of times, I think once they see the request for bid, that will initiate questions from them as to how they're going to put their proposal together. And I mean, I don't know that you need to have a set, something that you're going to tell them, say, but I think someone needs to be prepared to answer those questions in a acceptable way.
I think that's the
think-
concern that I have, is how are we going to answer those questions without bringing subjectivity into it?
Yeah, and I think in terms of, having struck out this language from the RFP, I think that one way to address that would be to kind of open the bid meeting with a little bit of an overview and context on the RFP. Just let people know that these plans have been passed with a lot of public engagement, and also, add that we emphasize during that point, just to address all the concerns here, that we want to make sure that people are referencing these, but also making sure that they're looking at this very neutrally and just want to, get to the best recommendation without, considering the impact of the single hauler system that has been, serving a lot of residents for the past several years, but also looking at these documents that have a lot of research and community engagement that have got into them, and just kind of laying out the full picture and making sure that the way that we're messaging it is very neutral, and then, and then opening it up for questions, just so that we're addressing any concerns about how people might take these plans, I guess.
So based upon that, would it be incumbent upon us to add one more bullet point that says basically just that? We are looking for a very, give me some language, but you know what I'm talking about. We want a plan that's based upon the facts, not subjectivity.
Yeah, Pete, this is Andy, and I also noticed that Jerry McGraw asked in the chat if he could speak again. But I would say that the purpose of a pre-bid meeting would be to provide instruction to, any of the bidders to let them know, again, like Sumeda said, to provide context, to let them know some additional detail about what the current structure is, and the different systems we have throughout the county, to let them know that we're trying to get information not just on service level and pricing, but on their satisfaction level with the service that they have and potential interest in different services or different options. And then let it go from there. I don't think it needs to be subjective or to put a thumb on the scale in either direction, either for or against single hauler or our current system. Like you said, it's just we're trying to gather as much information so we can make the best informed decision as a community that we can.
I agree
And
with
I was gonna say, to Pete's point, I think you are right that we could put that in writing as well, and it would just, remove the barrier of people having to attend a meeting, which, it just makes it a more streamlined process. We could also do the meeting, but it doesn't hurt to include that language if we can agree on that.
Yes. If we have just one more bullet point that basically tells them we're looking for the facts. We don't need subjectivity into it. We need things to be based upon hard data as much as possible, and go from there. Now, one thing that Andy said, and I know Bob said as well in a previous meeting, is the part about satisfaction. I believe that is subjective and can be considered subjective as much as anything else. Because, how do we know? We don't know what they know, in other words. So I still firmly believe that if it's going to be a satisfaction survey, it should be based upon facts that we gather through here.
I firmly believe that the reference in regards to letting bidders know that over the last 40, 50 years, that the freedom of choice by the customer is very important. And that's the way it's been for years. Historical reference is not subjective, it's factual. And there has to be reference the fact that that's the way it's been for years, and that that in itself is important to the participants that you're going to be servicing.
I'm not saying that it's not important to the participants that we're servicing, but that's really not what we're after here. We're after the facts.
Oh, go ahead, Pete, sorry.
That's fine. Go ahead, Samantha.
Well, I was just gonna suggest some language that I'm hoping, and it's kind of a first draft. I'm making it up as I speak, so please excuse some work in progress. But what if we added a sentence here that said something like, referencing this would be above scope, so kind of below where we've mentioned the plans. So saying referencing these previous studies and plans, as well as the benefits and existing context of the incumbent multi-hauler system. Sorry, I know this needs a lot of workshopping, but in recognition of these things, we still want to ensure that this study is done considering this context, but also completely neutral, with the goal of basically presenting the best facts and recommendation.
Do you want to type?
You know what I'm trying to say? I'm basically trying to say that, this is the context we want you to consider. We want to acknowledge the existing system. We want to acknowledge the studies, but the goal is very clearly to get to a fact-based, neutral, unbiased, objective, recommendation for our community.
My comment in regards to fact is that the fact is that over the last 50 years that the public has had the opportunity to choose their service provider. That's a fact. That's not subjective. That's not even in question. The point being is that the individual, the company that is going to make this study, that is a very important fact that should be part of the study and considered as they do their objective study into the future.
Well, to look, as far as it being a fact that that's what's happened in the past, I don't think that that's in question. That part's not an issue. Describing the system as it exists and how it has existed in the past, it is in the 5-year plan. Well, how it exists today is in the 5-year plan. And we did go through it, and we basically said that describe the system to a T, I think, which included the fact that we have subscription area where people directly subscribe to their waste hauler. You have home rule cities that choose by and through their home rule city, and municipalities who have decided that that's the way that they want to do it, and their voters or whatever decided that that's the way that they wanted to do it then. Everybody, we talked about the choice, and we want to make sure that everybody has choice, but everybody in the community has choice, whether it's a contracted or municipal or subscription. So just keep it, I'm just trying to say that we do have the history there in the 5-year plan. Maybe not the history, but we have the plan described as it is exists today. So if we're throwing out the plan, we're throwing out the description that we've all agreed to.
I
Just
think that, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, I suggested some language in the chat, basically, says referencing the benefits and challenges of existing studies and practices, provide an unbiased and fact-based recommendation. And you all can kind of help refine that, but I think that what we're trying to get at here is that there are these studies that have recommendations, not that, not everybody on the committee is gonna, accept everything that's in those studies. Similarly, there's a perception of the existing hauler system that not everyone's gonna fully agree on the benefits and challenges of that either. So just clarifying in the language that the studies, the existing system, they all have their pluses and minuses, and we just want the RFP provider to look at this neutrally and through an unbiased lens. So I'm hoping that kind of extends equally, across the board.
And so I've copied and pasted that into the bullet point, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's where it needs to be.
Yeah, it needs some workshopping, but.
So do we have a consensus in regards to doing a pre-bid meeting? Because I think that what I heard was that it's important, and we need to make sure that it's available for everyone to be at the pre-bid meeting.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any issues with that. I mean, I know that that's the wants of this committee. So, and like I said before, I don't see any problem with doing that. So, but that's not an issue.
That makes good sense, Pete. But I do think that the 2 references that you've stricken should be restored.
And I think the language we're adding will cover against, any misinterpretation there. So I would agree that we should restore the struck out language.
So we
Should
need,
restore them? Is that what you just said?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay.
restore them, and then the added bullet would kind of frame them in context.
I disagree with that. I think at least the 2018 study should be struck.
I would vote against that.
I mean, the point does say, acknowledge that there may be some challenges and benefits to both, to the studies. So I think that we're covered in terms of, basically telling people to look at it and take it at, not take it at face value, but just to examine those reports.
Well, if we have to, if you're subject to agreeing to a motion, I'll make a motion. Mr. Chairman.
Is your motion to strike them or to leave them in?
Yeah, my motion is that the RFP should include a pre-meeting of the individuals that are attempting in order to establish the RFP, and secondly, that the language concerning the January 2018 study should be struck. I don't think that we can strike the paragraph above that simply because it is a statement of a 5-year management plan that we can't do anything about anyway. So strike the one that you just did, Pete, and that we have a pre-qualified meeting prior as part of the RFP.
I would suggest two motions, two separate motions. I don't think there's any disagreement on having a pre-bid meeting, but there is disagreement on whether to strike the 2018 study.
So are you saying put 2 motions instead of just one, Patrick?
Yeah,
Do we, if we're gonna include, I agree that should be 2 motions. I think it's 2 different things. On the pre-bid meeting, I think Pete's a little concerned as to who and what answers will be given at that pre-bid meeting. Would it be a good idea to have a small committee or group of interested parties that would be willing to attend this pre-bid meeting so that, everyone has fair representation of what information is given to the bidders?
Yes. Every RFP that goes out, we have to identify the evaluation committee. And in the past, that's included Bruce Burrow, Sandra, myself, Karen. Was it 4? Is that what we've done in the past?
I believe so.
Yeah, so that's basically what we've done in the past. So, and again, I don't think that having the pre-bid meeting has to be within the RFP. That is just a request of the purchasing department, according to the rules. And, if there's not going to be a pre-bid meeting, you guys would call me out on it really fast. I'm going to say that if I cannot make a pre-bid meeting happen, which I know I will, you guys will be the first to know, and then we'll come back and take another look at this. But
Actually, the issue is not just having the meeting. It is having the participants who are going to submit at the meeting. I mean, that's where we started. It was
Yes.
making sure that everybody who is going to give you a proposal would be at that meeting.
Yeah, the requirement is that anybody that's going to be awarded the bid will have to have attended the pre-bid meeting. That's not a problem.
Right.
It's not a requirement, are you saying? Are you
It is a
saying that
requirement.
No, it is a requirement.
it should be a requirement as part of the RFP, as far as I'm concerned?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Then I didn't understand your statement, Pete. Are you saying that the pre-qualification issue will be part of the RFP or not?
No, I don't believe that it has to be written into the RFP. It's the process on the back end through our purchasing department that they set all that stuff up. We just tell them that we want a pre-bid meeting and that anybody that's gonna be bidding on the job has to attend. If they don't attend that pre-bid meeting, then they don't get the bid on the package.
And we can be assured that that's happened, that happens how? I mean, are you saying that that's part of a package that goes out to those individuals that want to participate?
And usually you have to sign in, like when you attend that pre-bid meeting, you'll sign in with your name and company, and then that determines that you attended and are allowed to bid on the project.
So as part of that process, anybody that asks a question to the system, which is through Bonfire, so it's kind of, it's through that. Any of those questions have to get put into a document for everybody to see. So it can't just be somebody's asking something on the side over here and not everybody gets to hear what's done. It's done as about as fair as can be. That's what we want. So to go back to it, how do we know that we're going to get that pre-bid meeting? I will go to our purchasing department and get that verified and bring it back to the committee.
I think it's obviously possible. I've been on mandatory pre-bid meeting jobs with the city already, Pete, so I don't think you'll have a problem there.
I don't either. I just,
Okay,
that's why I don't believe that it needs to be written into it. I hope that y'all trust me that we're going to get that done. And if not, I would come back to you. But I don't see any trouble with getting that done.
I don't have
Okay,
a
I
problem writing
understand.
it in there just to give people comfort if they're concerned either, because I know it can be done.
Say that again, Bruce.
If it gives people comfort to have it written into the RFP, then I see no problem with that as well, if it gives people comfort.
If it,
So, we're up against time here. Do you want to have a vote on these two motions? Just to try to, whether, I guess the first motion should be whether we're going to include the 2018 survey. Does everyone want to vote on that?
I'll make the motion if it requires a motion.
Okay, we have a motion to determine whether the 2018 study will be in the RFP. Do we have a second?
Is that
Second.
motion to eliminate the 2018 study from the RFP?
To eliminate the 2018.
Okay, yeah,
yes.
a motion to eliminate the 2018 study from the RFP. A motion's been made by Mr. Lee. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second, I think Bruce, but I'm not sure.
That is Bruce, yes.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. All in favor of striking the 2018 survey in the RFP? Can we just hold hands up, or do we need to?
I would say anybody that makes a vote needs to be on camera. Signify for saying aye. In all honesty, if you're going to participate, you need to be visible the entire meeting. So just want to let that out there. So anyway, yays and no, I would suggest yays and nays.
Okay. All in favor of striking the 2018 survey from the RFP, please say yay.
Yeah,
Yay. All opposed?
No.
No. Only because I believe that the language, the proposed language kind of covers against it, but yeah.
I agree, and I
We had
think
three
the inclusion of the
fours and
2018
two
study
against.
is important background information, whether or not you agree with it.
I think me, Mr. Lee and Bruce all voted to have it stricken. And Pat and Sumeda voted against. Am I missing anyone?
I believe that that's correct.
Bruce Blue,
I
Did we
voted
get a
against it. And I voted to remove it.
Okay. Bruce Blue voted to remove, so I'd say
It's 4-2,
4-2.
so it passes.
Passes. Okay, so we'll strike that from the RFP. And then the second motion will be to include a pre-bid meeting are we gonna make a motion to just make sure that a pre-bid meeting is required to be attended by any bidder? Or do we need to make sure that that is written in this proposal?
I make
Or
a
just-
motion that, Adam, if I may, I will make a motion to have a mandatory pre-bid meeting included in the RFP proposal.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to include a mandatory pre-bid meeting in the bid. All in favor of having that meeting added to the RFP, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. So Pete, I think if you add this to that process or to the,
I've added this
Okay.
language to
Okay.
the document where I think that it would belong.
okay. Is everyone okay with the wording that Pete has added there?
Looks
Yes.
fine.
Okay. Other than that, are there any other
This,
any
the
other
language-
reasons preventing us from taking this, I'm assuming, to the full committee for approval?
do we need to vote on the first bullet point referencing the benefits and challenges of existing?
If removing the 2018 addressed concerns, then I don't know that we need that additional language.
I think you're right. That was the impetus of putting that in there. So if the 2018 study's out, then I don't think we need that. I agree with that.
It's gone.
Okay. In the current form as it is now, is everyone, should we vote on this? If we agree to take it to the full committee?
So move.
Do we need a motion to do that, or can we?
It was made by Pat.
Yes.
Motion by Pat, second by Bruce. All in favor of the request for proposal in its current state to be moved along to the full committee, say aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes have it. The request for proposal in its current state looks good and will be taken to the full committee.
Excellent. I think we got a good document. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I may ask, Jerry had another comment. I don't know if it's relevant still at this point, but could we give the floor to Jerry if he has something that he wants to share with us?
sure. Yep, floor is open, Jerry.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to comment a minute ago, and I believe you're still in a situation, a 5-year plan, making references to efficiency and inefficiencies and such is still an issue. I would suggest in your public meeting, I think that's going to be a significant issue. You just simply bring it out that is in there. It's in the plan at this point. That is solid in the plan, but there have been questions raised about the validity of that. And therefore the people who are going to make proposals should understand there are questions about the validity of that and let them make their plans regardless of which way that may be biasing.
I agree with that.
If I could also say, Pete, thank you for pointing out. I know that you've got some correspondence from me, but you pointed out a few minutes ago that members of the board should remain on camera during the entire discussion. And I think we had a couple of people kind of drop this time. So it's just an education thing by the state law. We've got to be, members have to be visual on the camera the entire discussion period.
Yes, Jerry brought this up, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and we're gonna bring that back to the board to make sure that the board understands that and to make sure that all the committees understand that moving forward. So I appreciate you pointing that out. Jim.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
before we leave, I have one other question. Pete, did you say that this is our last meeting of the sub?
Yeah, so that's what I did want to bring up. It's not, it's
What's going on?
It's the last meeting of the subcommittee on contracts. This is the last, I believe, contract that we have that we were working on. So everything that came out of the 5-year plan, I think, is complete. So we wanted to take it back to and just go back to a monthly and advisory committee meeting where any additional business would be conducted. It's not saying that we are not going to conduct business on contracts. It's just that we would conduct them with the full committee.
So if another contract is required, you're saying this subcommittee would not be renewed, is what you
No,
just
I
said?
didn't say that whatsoever. I'd say that if something comes up that requires any subcommittee at any time, we can reconstitute the committee to handle that, whether it's contracts or anything else.
Well, I thought you said that it would go to the advisory committee.
This RFP is going to the advisory committee.
Sure.
Yes.
There isn't a need for it to come back to the subcommittee.
No.
That you're aware of. So we're really out of business at this for the subcommittee.
Any other public input, public comment? I guess Pete just covered about this being the last contract subcommittee meeting. We'll go to just our regular advisory committee meeting, the third Wednesday of the month. I think ours is the 21st this month. 109 board meeting, the fourth Wednesday of the month. Any other questions, comments before we adjourn?
I have one question for Pete quickly, if I may. And Pete, once we advertise this RFP, how long a window do you get for respondents?
The purchasing department generally asks us how long we want it to be out. And what I would say that because this is a little bit different than bidding out how to purchase widgets, that we would want to put this out for an extended period of time, just to give respondents enough time to be prepared. So I would honestly, I would say at least 21 days. And probably I would suggest a 30-day with the pre-meeting being within that, maybe at the 15-day or 5-day or wherever we decide to put it, that makes it most advantageous for us to make sure that they understand. And now that I said that, I think it makes more sense to have that at the beginning so that people understand before they start making their proposals.
Oh, great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions, comments?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by Pat. Do I have a second? Second by Bruce. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you all for everything, your time, and we will see you at the full committee meeting.
Sure.
All right, thank you all.
Cheers.